going to give you a little bit about me. Essie said, could I tell you a bit about who I am and where I've come from and how I've ended up here. I'm going to tell you a bit about the science that I did, and you can see I still really love science. This is me yesterday getting very excited about a little bee that was in one of those slides. I'm going to tell you a bit about policy, and I'll explain a bit about what policy is, because I think a lot of people just don't know, and why would you? I'm going to talk a little bit about transferable skills. There are lots of things that I've done in every job I've had. One of them has been stacking and unstacking a dishwasher. And I've done that in a lab, I've done it as a waitress. I do it still today in our charity because we have a big open plan kitchen where people can sit and work in a collaborative way. But there are lots of skills that by being a scientist you will pick up and you will be able to take whatever job you end up doing. And I'll give you a few ideas of things that you might like to try. So first up, a bit about me. So this is me, aged about 3.5. I grew up on a farm in the middle of the Yorkshire Dales. My dad was and still is a farmer. My brother is a farmer. My mum had gone to university and was a botanist, and also she's an artist. And I think my love of science and plants and nature came from her and also from my auntie. I sort of think this is a bit of a David Attenborough look. I'm sort of about to introduce the daffodils in the background. I've never been a science communicator, but yeah. That was where I started off. I loved science at high school, and I ended up deciding that I would go to Edinburgh to do a pharmacology degree. I was super lucky because back then you didn't have to pay for fees, and I was able to go to Edinburgh and did a 4-year degree, which let me do some subjects that were outside just science. So I did things like the history of science as well, which was really brilliant. I loved Edinburgh. That course was also quite flexible. So I didn't have to say in my first year, I really want to do pharmacology. I wouldn't have known what pharmacology was, but it was a very general biology degree that got more and more specific as the years went on. And I ended up doing pharmacology with industrial experience, PIE, so I was a pie girl. And I went to work for a pharmaceutical company just out of Glasgow as part of my time there. I loved that so much that I wanted to carry on doing science, was really driven by it, and I went to Oxford to do a PhD in pharmacology. This is Edinburgh. Our student flat was somewhere down here, and these are Salisbury Crags, where I used to go and get a bit of fresh air and take some time out. And this is a pharmacology department in Oxford. Again, we had a nice balcony, and that was where I spent an awful lot of time. Since then, I've had a range of different jobs, all of which have used the experience of science, either the training that I've got, the ability to gather evidence, and those transferable skills that I'll talk about in a range of different ways. So I went to Paris, and I was an overseas research fellow in L'Hôpital Salpêtrière, so a big hospital that did research in Paris. I came back to London and worked for the medicines regulator. So we've heard about the importance of regulating medicines. So I was inside the government body which helps to regulate medicines and medical devices. At the time we were up a giant tower on the South Bank in London. I then that was when my policy career started. So I went to the Academy of Medical Sciences as a policy officer. I then moved to Arthritis Research UK, and I'm now the policy manager there. And as Essie said, I've gone back into government a bit and worked for the Department of Health as well. All of those have used science. So what was my science? I used to measure tiny cells in the brain, in the part of your brain that releases a chemical called 5-HT or serotonin, and that's a chemical that is so important for mental health. We know that people who lack 5-HT signalling the brain tend to get depression and can be suicidal. What we were trying to work out was how that system in your brain regulates itself. Because if we think it gets out of regulation, you can be psychotic, you can become quite crazy. If the system is too slow, not working well enough, you can get depressed and be very anxious. So we were looking to try and understand how that system worked. And that's the title of my thesis. What it meant in practice was I spent an awful lot of time listening to single brain cells firing and working out which drugs we could give to speed those cells up and slow them down. So that's a live picture of a cell firing. That was the science I did. Policy. So what is policy? So what we do now is we are the part of a bigger team that includes policy, public affairs and campaigning. And policy is about understanding the problems that you think government needs to take action on. That could be in the health service, it could be in social care, it could be in the benefits that are provided to people, it could be in the way that buildings are designed. There's lots of different problems that we can seek to address through policy. It's our job to work out what those problems are and critically to try and solve them, to try and work out what we think the answer is. Put more money into these areas, make these services more efficient, take people out of hospitals, put them into GP communities, change the way the system works. That's what policy is about, thinking up the ideas and the solutions. When you've got those, you can't just keep them locked into yourself. You've got to get them to the people who can make the decisions. Sometimes you can do that just by going and having a conversation. More often you need to work with people who can influence government. So we have a bit of our team that goes into Westminster, so you recognise Big Ben, talks to MPs, gets them fired up, gets them asking the government what to do, goes in and takes our ideas and starts to make noise and develop pressure. Sometimes even they're not enough. And if government really isn't listening, then we get everybody involved. And we say, hey, you, write to your MP, do a big social media thing, make some noise, get the press involved. And then we can use all this passion, all this experience, all these stories that people tell us to go back and get the government to do what we want them to do, hopefully. Doesn't always work quite as easy as that. So here's just a couple of examples. So when I was at the Academy of Medical Sciences, this is a big body which has some of the UK's best scientists, and we get them together in working groups to tackle really challenging issues. Their mission is to promote medical science and its translation into benefits for society. So one of the projects that I did there, and looking back now, you think, why on earth did we do this project? But lots of scientists were telling us that sometimes in our work we have to combine human tissue, so that could be human cells or human genetic material, with animal material, and we do that for lots of really good reasons in science. But they were worried about the extension of that work. How far should we go? What happens if we put too many human brain cells into an animal? Could we create something really difficult? We don't want that to happen. And so we took about 12 of the UK's best scientists who were doing these kind of experiments, and we worked with them to come up with a regulatory framework, and we gave that to the right bit of government. So now there is a group who regulate these experiments to make sure that we can't go beyond what people think is ethically and socially responsible. That was that report. Oh, I've gone the wrong way. Policy and arthritis. So this is my current job. If you don't know, arthritis is the biggest cause of pain and disability in the UK. I've heard some brilliant science this morning about pain and the impact that it can really have on people's lives. Every year, about 25% of the general population go to a GP because they've got a musculoskeletal condition like arthritis. Imagine that, 1 in 5 of every people being at their GP is because they've got a physical problem. We just quite often don't talk about it. People say, oh, it's just a bit of rheumatics, it's just a bit of pain, it doesn't matter. It really does. And one of the things we are so passionate about is because it affects people's ability to go to work. You just can't get up out of bed some days. Some days you have a flare and you need to walk slowly. You certainly don't want to be travelling on a rush hour train. So we've done an awful lot of work to explain to government why people with these physical conditions need to be able to work flexibly, need to work from a laptop in the cafe around the corner, need adaptations to their chairs and things to sit on so that they can get to work and so they can contribute. And we put all these ideas into a big report, and this is my chief exec up here. This is a guy called Liam O'Toole talking to Sarah Newton, who's the Government Minister for Health and Work and Disability, and to one of our members of staff who has a physical health condition. And then she came to our office and she said, yeah, we will work with government to try and change this. Ooh, I'm going to trip over the cable if I'm not careful. And so as Essie said, I've also worked inside government. So whilst I was doing all this work on arthritis, we found out, well, we knew already that there were huge overlaps between physical and mental health conditions. And if you have a painful condition that you're living with, it can really start to affect your mental health. Because my background was in mental health research, I was really keen to keep that part of my career alive. So I went and worked with DH, and we developed this framework for mental health research. Essie was on the children's and young people group for that, but we had about 50 senior academics involved. This doesn't provide all the answers by a long way, and it doesn't say to different research groups, hey, you over there do this, you over there do this. It says, here are some of the big ideas where we know there are gaps in the evidence base. So we need more work in school settings for children with mental health problems. We need to think outside the box. So that was our framework for mental health research. So just to move on a bit to your transferable skills, I think my career, such as it is, will tell you that you can take science and you can do an awful lot of things with it. If you do a science degree, you will be really good at project planning. You'll be able to analyse and synthesise written material. You'll be good at writing and presenting. You'll have to take ownership and accept responsibility for your work. You'll become good at presenting. Today's a good example. You'll do that later. And at networking with people and critically finding solutions and innovating. These are all skills you can take, and employers will love you because you'll be able to have these skills and take them wherever you go. And so just to finish, here's a few things that you can do or you might like to try. Develop a CV that shows off your skills. It doesn't have to be the same as anybody else's. You are you, be unique, be yourself. Think about getting a mentor. We talked about that today. Be prepared to do lots of applications. Don't worry when people turn you down. Don't let it put you off. Just keep going, do some more. Try an internship. If you're doing one job and you think, oh, I might be better at something else, but I've never really had a go at that, try, see if you can do that. Talk to people in different roles. If you don't understand what different options are, how do you know if you're doing the thing that you're going to enjoy most? And just crucially, I think explore some different things. Sometimes you're not going to know unless you try. Good luck.